I was listening to leaders, some people say we've had 50 years of marriage without fights, without conflicts. People say we've had 25 years of stress-free marriage and peaceful, all those 25 years blissful. And it's hard to believe that, you're thinking like within 50 years, you guys haven't argued, you haven't fought. Isn't that even possible? Of course, it's difficult to believe that, especially if, like most youths today, you take your example of marriage from Hollywood, Nollywood, I guess, and not many people not growing in very stable homes to actually have a good example to learn and copy from. But then, in my very tiny little puny experience in marriage, I've come to understand something, conflict in human relationships, whether it's marriage or it's friendships or any relationship at all, is directly proportional to immaturity. Okay, so you can say that if you want to have a blissful marriage, then you have to grow in maturity. The more mature one or both parties involved in the marriage is, the lesser conflicts emerge. But maturity is also developed through conflict and challenges. And that's the irony, right? Therefore, conflicts will come, but the resulting outcome of those conflicts, whether they cause stress and cause chaos and cause fights, or they actually help you grow, is all dependent on you, the people, the parties involved in the marriage, which means each conflict guarantees that another conflict like it doesn't emerge in the future, if and only if you take the responsibility to humble yourself, open your hearts and your minds, and learn from the conflict. So if there is a misunderstanding, then it takes maturity to decide to communicate. Okay, I wasn't happy that you did, or your that made me feel that. You communicate, you understand, you compromise, and then you grow. And if you grow, then it means that that particular kind of conflict would most likely not emerge again in the future, because you already know your expectations and you already know what not to expect from the other person. And if that doesn't happen, then conflict becomes the knockout punch that destroys human relationship, marriage or otherwise. So in essence, if you spend time studying, growing and developing your maturity, first in your mind, growing in your mind, in your understanding, because there's a level of maturity you get to that a lot of things that other people who are not so mature would take as some serious trouble will be something simple and normal to you. And if you notice, most very successful and mature people, tend to overlook things. Okay, you go around and someone steps on your shoe. The mature person, oh, it's okay, I'm sorry. Oh, it's nothing, it's just a shoe, I'll polish it. The immature person, this is my $900 shoes, you've just stepped on it, blah 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 blah, and a whole chaos emerges. Obviously, you can already see that the size of your brain is very small, if you understand what I mean. So conflict in human relationship is inversely proportional to maturity. The more maturity, the less conflict. The less maturity, the more conflict. So perhaps that's why they usually discourage very, very young people to get married, because you're like, okay, you haven't yet grown to a certain level of maturity. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of conflicts thrown at you. But it's not about age, right? If you spend time studying and growing and developing yourself and your mind on handling conflict, then the conflict comes just as a stepping stone to actually grow together and bond better in that human relationship, marriage included. Now, I know this is true because there is no conflict out there, that there is no marriage in the world that hasn't survived it. Many people say we destroyed our marriage because this or that cheated, or this cheated, but you still look out there are a lot of marriages that went through such kind of conflict of infidelity and still pulled through. Whether it's financial misconduct, sexual misconduct, physical abuse, you would still find another couple that walked through that particular conflict, that particular storm, and they are walking strong today and they are moving forward. So the question therefore is not that any of these things are the knockout blow. It was the knockout blow to some people because they were not equipped with the level of maturity required to handle that. Without which, how do you explain the fact that others under the same circumstances and probably even worse still made it out and are thriving and are doing better? This is why I seriously believe that God intended marriage to actually be for life. Divorce has no place, because it's not the divorce, it's not the conflict, it's not what life throws at you in the marriage or the mistakes. It's about you as a person growing, and that's basically what marriage does. Marriage comes to expose the rough edges that you need to work on and smoothen over time, so that the more and more as the years go by and the more and more you grow in the maturity as the conflicts come, you become smoother, more refined, and a much more better person than you could have ever been if you never got married. Lack of maturity increases the chances of conflict. But also maturity is developed through conflict. So if you're not mature, conflict comes. But then that conflict can help you gain maturity. So the problem is in the conflict. The problem isn't that you don't have the maturity. The problem is you. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to grow? Are you willing to pay the sacrificial price? In the past, marriage was primarily an institution where children were raised under a healthy safety net for them to grow to be productive and, resourceful members of society. But then we have reduced it to being two people who love themselves and want to live happily ever after. Now, when you use that definition, it means the moment I'm no longer happy, then I have to walk out. But what about the real reason, the foundational institutional purpose that is bigger than both parties? If there is something bigger than both parties, then each person's individual desires and feelings and pleasures and happiness take second place. Not that they are not important, but then you have a central purpose and a central goal to pursue. So that is it. We must make the commitment to grow our minds, to grow our spirits, to grow our physical bodies towards maturity. And then the irony is that when you look at older couples that have really spent time together and have really grown in maturity, you think that the more mature they become, the more childish, in quotes, they also turn out to be. But by childish, I don't really mean childish. I mean more playful. So a lot of things get to be overlooked. A lot of things that could have caused chaos, could have caused misunderstandings, almost hold no substance in them. Why? They have grown so tall. The taller you become, heights that were very impressive when you were much shorter, those heights are basically insignificant. So that is something about how maturity works. And so I challenge you, grow your level of maturity so that you can weather the conflicts of human relationship, and that includes marriage. So that is it. That's the secret to have a conflict-free marriage. Not necessarily that you will not have something to disagree upon, but it's that you have grown in maturity, or you're willing to use that conflict as a classroom to grow in maturity and to keep always having a blissful and a happy marriage. So by this video, I wish you happily ever after. Not necessarily happily ever after, but maturity ever after. I guess it's the same thing and even better. Well, I'd like you to tell me in the comments below. Perhaps I missed something. I could be wrong, but share me your own thoughts. Is there any conflict or any type of conflict that you think maturity cannot handle as far as human relationships are concerned? Is there any conflict that is bigger than any form of maturity, that no, it doesn't matter, once this happens, it's over. Once this happens, it's irreparable? Is there any such conflict? I'd like to know. Perhaps there is one. Share that in the comments below. Thank you. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, and thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. I'm Bodas Jumesi. That's our time in this video. I believe you were inspired by it. Then give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to this channel for more great content like this. Remember to take responsibility on what you learned today. This video is proudly sponsored by our patrons. You too can support this channel by visiting our Patreon page. The link is in the video description below. I want to say a big thank you to all our patrons out there. I am Bodas Jumesi from Wisdom for Dominion. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.